Here are the tools and materials you will need for this LED installation. You'll need a drill with a 3/8 inch drill bit, a wire cutter / stripper, scissors to cut your electrical tape, a measuring tape, a soldering iron and soldering wire, some 16 to 22 gauge wire. Doesn't really matter the gauge. It's very important that you have 2 joined wires. It makes it very helpful for routing and keeping the wires neat rather than all over the place. You're going to need electrical tape, 5-minute epoxy, and something to mix your 5-minute epoxy on, such as a piece of wood and a nail. You'll also need the LEDs themselves. I'm using 10mm LEDs, reds for the rear and white ones for the front. One last thing you're going to need that I forgot to mention is a 9-volt connector. I've already installed mine on the truck, as you can see. First things first, we're going to measure from the front of the vehicle to the rear to figure out how much power supply wire we need. Measure from the inside of the front bumper here to the inside of the rear bumper here. On the X-MAXX, it's 23 inches from the inside of the front bumper to the inside of the rear bumper. Add 4 to 5 inches of extra wire for routing it through your truck. You're going to lose some distance in the wire when you do that. So 23 plus 4 is 27 inches. I'm going to cut this at 27. And now you have your power supply wire for your LEDs. Cut your wire 9.5 inches from the front end. Strip both sides of the wire as well as the 9-volt connector. Twist them all together, solder them, and cover it with electrical tape or heat shrink. Now it's time to route your power wire from the front of your vehicle to the rear of your vehicle. Here's a look at how I routed my wire. It may be difficult to view it as it blends in pretty well. Here's my 9-volt connector. You can see I tucked it in next to the receiver box here in the battery tray. Your 9-volt battery connects and fits in perfectly right here in the battery tray. Disconnect and remove the 9-volt battery until the build is complete. Now figure out where on the front bumper you'd like to mount your lights. Mark your holes, and using your drill and your 3/8 inch drill bit, drill your holes. Here are the 4 holes I drilled. Now test fit your LEDs to make sure they fit. If they don't, slightly enlarge the hole and check again. Now repeat the same process on the rear of the truck. Again, Test your holes to make sure the LEDs fit. If they do not fit, slightly enlarge the holes. Get your epoxy and something to mix it on, as well as something to mix it with. Pierce the top. Okay. Shouldn't need a whole lot of epoxy to secure them in place. Read your epoxy directions and make sure your epoxy is sufficiently mixed. You have to move quickly with the epoxy as it sets up very quickly. Secure your LEDs from the rear using your epoxy. I suggest you do the front and the rear separate each other, as the epoxy dries very quickly and it's difficult to do all of the LEDs with one batch. Now secure the LEDs in the rear just as you did in the front with epoxy. Once all of your LEDs are epoxied in place, let the LED cure for the recommended time. After letting the epoxy holding your LEDs in place cure, it's time to strip your LED wires and your power supply wires. After you've stripped all of your LED wires and power supply wires, it's time to solder them all together. After soldering all of your connections, cover them with electrical tape. After using electrical tape to cover your connections, neaten up your wires with electrical tape and/or zip ties. As you can see, it looks a lot better after neatening everything up with electrical tape. After neatening up the wires on the front, like we did in the back, the installation is complete. Now plug in your 9-volt battery to make sure everything's working properly.